I'm a member of the media, so I can be on a public.
You're here trying to provoke us.
Why don't you just walk away? Don't touch the mic.
Put that mic out of my face.
Don't touch it.
You put that mic in my face. Get that mic out of my face. That mic in my face. Stop putting that mic in my face.
Why?
Because I want to keep the peace here.
Why don't you uphold your oath, officer? I'm practicing journalism on a public street.
Guy, fuck you and fuck Ezra.
Hey, watch yourself. Hey, don't touch us.
Don't touch me.
You don't walk away.
Go.
Officer, are you going to enforce the law?
If you point
Are we under Canadian law or Sharia laws here, sir?
For my officer safety, please.
Your officer safety. Folks, this is Sharia law like you're seeing on the eve of Remembrance Day.
Let me show you what is happening in the heart of a Jewish community in Toronto. It's a neighborhood at Bathurst and Shepherd. There's a number of Jewish neighborhoods in Toronto, but this is perhaps the most Jews per square mile in Toronto. In fact, I know that's a fact. It happens to be my neighborhood, and the atrocious member of parliament there is named Yara Sachs. It's a very Jewish neighborhood, and every single week since October 7th, there was a group of local Jews who would gather on the sidewalk, and for 1 hour, they would wave Israeli and Canadian flags standing on the sidewalk, being positive and patriotic. They would have signs saying, give the hostages back, and people would drive by and typically go honk honk because it's a Jewish neighborhood. And that was going on every week for a year. And then suddenly, foreign nationals, not Canadians, professional anti-Semites started showing up and heckling and engaging and bringing terrorist flags and shouting and bringing swastikas and threatening. And now every single Saturday, dozens of pro-Hamas thugs, I'm going to call them gang members, are brought into the heart of this Jewish neighborhood to antagonize the Jews. Can you imagine if a group of, let's say, Proud Boys, if there even is such a thing, went into the heart of a Muslim neighborhood and had an obscene, profanity-laden protest outside a Muslim community center every single week? What do you think the police would do? Well, in this case, they escort the pro-Hamas protesters. It reminds me of what they did in another Jewish neighborhood called Armour Heights, when these same thugs, literally the same people, blocked a street into a residential area. It was sort of a bridge. There was only two ways into this community, and these Muslim pro-Hamas thugs blocked it. There was no embassy there, no offices. It was just Jewish homes. The thugs blocked it, and the police brought them coffee. Remember this?
They left. No one told them they can't come back. Otherwise, he would have said, "Okay, I understand."
Okay, I'll just ask just so. Sorry, it's the person who said that.
Jihad? Yeah. I know the guy. No. This guy with a yellow vest on walking.
How did you get coffee from the police?
We're not the police. Someone has brought it for us, but the police won't let them in. So the police is now becoming our little messengers between us. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. We're on the bridge. They're not letting anyone else come on, which makes no sense. Because if we're already on the bridge, how is there public safety?
Yeah, so the coffee concierges are at work at Bathurst and Shepherd again, and our reporter, David Menzies, went there to report. I don't think it's that newsworthy that there was a pro-Israel protest. That's not really news, and I don't think we would cover it. But when the pro-Hamas side showed up to antagonize and the police were there to assist, that becomes news. And so we've sent David Menzies there, and let me show you what it was like. And you tell me, the conduct of these pro-Hamas types, how far away are what they're doing from what we saw in Amsterdam? I tell you, it's not very many degrees further down the road. Here's what happened this weekend at Bathurst and Shepherd in Toronto. Take a look.
Don't touch them! What's wrong with you guys? We told you to
are you guys? What do you mean, you guys? See this? Yeah, my grandfather spent 5 years of his life fighting the Nazis. You think I'm going to bend the knee to the Islamo-Nazis? No. What crime am I committing? No, come on. Enforce the law. Obey your oath, officer. Obey your oath. Yeah. You're enforcing Sharia law? What am I doing here? Huh? Hey.
Goodbye! Back to your protest. Are you dealing with this? Back to your protest. Everybody back to your protest.
Back, please. Back, please.
You're interfering in a police investigation.
So he walked over into the group, he was stirring them up, so he was
Back it up. I'm not going to keep telling you.
Yeah, but I'm away, man. I'm not close to it.
You're over there.
They're the same distance as me. You know I'm not going to do anything. I'm just filming. Come on.
Folks, this is Sharia law like you're seeing on the eve of Remembrance Day. These officers are disobeying their oath. They are assaulting me. They are bending the knee to the Islamo-Nazis. My grandfather went to war for more than 5 years fighting the real Nazis. Thank you. I'm kind of glad he's not around now to see these so-called police officers. Oh, he's taking my wallet now. Bending the knee to Islamo-Nazis. Unbelievable. This is Justin Trudeau's Canada. Did not Cherry warn us about this 5 years ago? You know, we back home and you guys are acting shamefully. I'm practicing journalism. My cameraman and I are getting assaulted, and we're under arrest.
Well, joining me now is the man of the hour, the man that the Toronto Police Service chose to arrest. They did not arrest any Hamas supporters. They didn't arrest anyone for chanting calls for genocide. They arrested the reporter for peacefully asking the genocidal maniacs questions. And joining me now is David Menzies. David, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Ezra. And by the way, I just want to make one clarification. What set the mob on fire was not me reaching out to the pro-Hamas supporters, but rather there were these individuals there were 3 or 4. They wear the garb of Orthodox Jews. They're part of a cult in Israel where they deny the state of Israel while milking Israel for all its social benefits, mind you. Israelis, Jews the world over, despise these people because they line up with the pro-Hamas people.
I know who you mean. They're called the Nachai Karta.
Right.
And they're paid by Iran. I've seen them in New York and Montreal. There's very few of them in the world. Like it's like 0.1%. They are to Jews what the fundamentalist that Westboro Baptist Church is to Christians. You know the Westboro Baptist Church that has those signs saying God hates fags, and they go to the funerals of American soldiers. The most offensive, odious people in the world. They're not Baptists. Well, they say they are, but they're 0.01% of Christians. That's how extreme these natural right cartel are, but it's worse. They're paid by Iran. They don't actually believe it, but they rent themselves all out like prostitutes. So that's what set things off?
Yes, and it was almost like, Ezra, it was uncanny because why should I even bother interviewing the pro-Hamas people? It's an exercise in futility. They just scream or they chant free, free Palestine and the rest of it. I wanted to know why these particular Jews were on the side of Hamas. Kind of the vibe I'm getting, it's like chickens in support of Colonel Saunders.
Well, it's the money. You should ask them about the money. They hate it when I ask them about the money.
You know what? That'll be if I get an opportunity. But the pro-Hamas people went ballistic. It was like mama bear protecting their cubs. I think it was, Ezra, like, oh, no. Don't you dare ask our useful idiots any questions that make them look dumb. Exactly what it would have been, And so I was assaulted by these people in full view of the cops, I must say. And that's the point where they went to the cops and they said, take them away. And the cops complied. The Hamas people, Ezra, are leading around the members of the Toronto Police Service by the nose like some circus donkey.
I have a theory on that. In fact, let's get to it right now. You went to the police station. We'll talk in just a hot minute about your arrest, the bizarre handcuffs, the threatened charge. The charge didn't materialize. Our lawyer getting right on this case. I'm very proud of how we handled it legally. I was out of town, so I couldn't attend immediately, but I'm glad things worked out. But when you were at the police station, just give me a second on that. And I think you might have caught it on tape. One of the Hamas thugs went to the police station. You happened to see him.
Yeah, Ezra, I think it was a pure coincidence.
It was.
But I was recording with Lincoln J outside 32 Division, and up comes a rental cube van. And very much like the one, remember about 5 years ago, the Alec Manassian rampage, that's where 32 Division is, in that section of Yonge Street where this incel ran over, I think, 13 people he killed. And so that, just seeing that van there with this guy in it gave me bad vibes. But that's besides the point. He gets out of the van. This is the guy, the chief one who was assaulting me, Ezra.
Do you know his name?
I do not, but I'm sure we can find that out. And he was smiling like the Cheshire Cat, and he said words to the effect, look at that, David Menzies, once again arrested for assaulting police and for being a racist. And I said, well, first of all, the charge was not assaulting police. Secondly, please give me any example of anything I've ever said in my life that's racist. Oh, and by the way, what the hell are you doing here? Are you here to turn yourself in for violating Section 319 of the Criminal Code, chanting for calls for genocide? And he just smiled and he went in there. Ezra, I'll tell you, we waited there, I think, a good 20 minutes. I think we got the interaction we needed, so we had to leave. But what, and I've had conversations with others. What was he doing in there? Was he pointing out to the cops, this guy, and that guy on the Jewish side, these were the things they said. These were the symbolisms they did. I want you to, go after them. I think that he was giving the police their homework.
Here's my theory. And the light bulb went on for me when you said he went to the police station on his own, all smiles, and you saw him by accident.
I'll just leave by noting not a word from any of the so-called freedom of speech groups on the left, not from the Canadian Association of Journalists, not from Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, not from PEN Canada, not from Amnesty International, not from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. They're all con men. They all claim to support freedom of the press, but only when it's their favorite left-wing reporters.
Ezra, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have one of the ringleaders from.
Got to your lawyers again?
Yes.
For committing another unnecessary obstruction of police. and attacking our people again
No, you're
unnecessarily.
wrong. I didn't attack anyone.
Yes, you did. You came in and the police told you. You can't
No,
come
I
in.
was trying to talk
You
to
barged
those,
in.
the Jewish demonstrators on your side.
Yeah, but they
sir.
didn't want to talk
But
to
tell
you.
me,
You don't want
no.
to talk to a racist like you. You don't want to talk to someone
what
who's
makes
racist
me
like
racist?
you.
Why are you
Because
here?
you all know.
Are you turning
You all
yourself
know.
in for chanting genocide?
Well, we don't check genocide.
Oh,
You
yes,
want
you
to
do.
commit genocide.
From
Decide
the
that you
land
wanted
to
to
the
commit
sea,
genocide. Decide that you
Intifada,
didn't commit
go back to
genocide.
Europe.
Yeah, that's
By the way,
coexistence.
folks, this is one of the
That's coexistence.
ringleaders who has the ear of the cops. Look at that. That's Justin Trudeau's Canada. That's your diversity is our strength. That is the result of 9 years of vandalism to our country.
Remember the Toronto 18 when there was a terrorist cell?
Oh, yes.
And it turns out that the police had human intelligence on the inside. I forget the name of the particular turncoat, but there was a Muslim activist who for hundreds of thousands of dollars, he was paid literally hundreds of thousands of dollars by the RCMP to give names of his fellow Muslim activists to the cops. And he was an informant, is what I'm saying. And we know for a fact that CSIS has all sorts of elements and agents and human intelligence. And here's my theory. It's a hypothesis. Why is it that the same Islamic extremist activists, week after week, can clearly break the law? Not just hate speech laws, which I don't like, but which are on the books. Section 13, advocating genocide, creating a disturbance. There's a number of things that these guys do every single week, again and again. It's the same people again and again. And typically police would arrest the ringleaders. Why are they never arrested? And why is it so evident that when the cops are told by these leaders, arrest him, arrest David Menzies, they do?
Yeah.
Why are the cops so naturally defending these guys, bringing them coffee? The only way that makes sense to me is if those guys are actually paid informants by the government. And they have a sort of deal with the government where they say, you let us be anti-Semitic Nazis. You let us have our Nazi chants. You let us lightly push around and rough up the David Menzies of the world. And every now and then you arrest David Menzies or people we don't like. And in return, if there's a real terrorist that we detect, we'll throw you a bone every once in a while. Someone who was going to blow up a synagogue. If it's just smashing a window, we won't get involved, but pay us money. We'll be your insiders. I mean, the CSIS has done this before, of course. Grant Bristow, the head of the Heritage Front, was actually a CSIS agent. Yeah. And his job, he would argue, well, I was attracting all the white supremacists so I could keep tabs on them. Well, he actually created them. In this case, you have the actual Nazi leaders in Canada, my theory is, working for the government, and in return for keeping an eye peeled for catastrophic terrorists, the police turn a blind eye to, about 10 different species of lower level crimes. And so we have normalized those lower level crimes. We've normalized trespass. We've normalized mischief. We've normalized assault. We've normalized all the hate crimes, section 318, 319. We've normalized stalking, harassing. Section 176, I believe it is, besetting a religious place. So the police, I think, have cut a deal where they allow these Hamas operatives, many of whom are paid by Iran, where they let them do their thing without being molested by the law. And my theory is he was going to the cop shop afterwards for a debrief. Nothing else makes sense. You tell me what else makes sense.
Ezra, I want to say your theory is absolutely fascinating, and I don't use the word fascinating to make it sound preposterous. Quite the contrary. It makes complete sense.
I don't know what else. Tell me another explanation that makes sense.
Well,
why are they never arrested? Why is he happily going to the cop shop afterwards? Why are the cops doing his bidding and arresting you? Why are the cops not arresting him and his thugs? Tell me another theory that makes sense.
The only thing I can think of, well, not as this case, in specific, Ezra, but, earlier this year, Prime Minister Trudeau had a, confidential meeting with Toronto Police Chief Myron Demke. Why? The police chief doesn't take orders from the prime minister.
Or he's not supposed to, at least.
Well, exactly. And so what was said, Ezra, and here's my theory, and I have no proof. I'm going to say that right out there. So it's just a theory. I'm thinking Trudeau said, listen, in about a year, we got an election coming up. There's 5 times as many Muslims as there are Jews in Canada. And by the way, by that, I'm not saying that all Muslims go along with the rubbish we see at Bathurst and Shepherd every Sunday now. So can you go easy on the pro-Hamas folk? And by the way, if there are peaceful counter-demonstrators, Salman Sima of the Persian community, he's been arrested before for the odious crime of waving a Canadian flag. If there are any members of the independent media asking impolite questions, i.e. Rebel News, throw the book at them. In my heart of hearts, I think that might have been the nature of that conversation, because why the hell is Trudeau talking or lecturing Demkew in the first place?
Yeah, there's a lot of dark things going on here. And I started our show today by talking about what I saw in Amsterdam.
Yes.
And, you know, I always say I go to the United Kingdom and I go to Europe because it's a dystopian time machine where I can see 5 years into our future if we don't change things. And what's happening, these gangs, I call them gangs, these pro-Hamas gangs, have normalized anti-Semitism, have normalized fear on the streets, have normalized low-level crime. It's an anti-Semitic crime wave, and it's now the new normal. The Overton window has changed. Canada used to be this wonderful, peaceful, safe place, a high-trust society, and we have allowed the worst people in the world to come here and destroy our social cohesion. Many of them are not even Canadians. They're here under false pretenses. They're falsely claiming to be refugees. They're falsely claiming to be students. They're falsely claiming to be temporary foreign workers. As we know, 700 of them are on Iran's payroll. And we have allowed these people to sow seeds of hate. And those seeds are starting to bloom. And I blame Trudeau, of course, but I also blame the Premier of Ontario and other premiers, Premier of Quebec, the mayor of many of these cities, and it's for the same reason you said before. They can do the math. And that's why I believe that the number one issue in Canada, bigger than all other issues combined, is stopping mass immigration. Because every single problem in this country is made worse by mass immigration: crime, social cohesion, hatred, inflation, housing prices high, wages low, traffic, healthcare, crowding, literally every problem in Canada is made worse by mass immigration. But of course, what's terrifying to me is these people will irrevocably change the politics of this country. You see it in France. Why is Emmanuel Macron siding with Hamas? Banning the sale of weapons to Israel. By the way, they sell almost nothing to Israel. But why is he so ostentatiously putting sanctions on Israel? Because he looks out the window and Europe traded 6 million Jews for 25 million Muslims.
Unbelievable.
And he can do the math. And he might have some Jewish friends, and he might think the Jews are interesting and funny and have some achievements. And he might have a soft spot for Jews. I don't doubt that he does. But how many millions of French Muslims on there who he wants their vote, and he doesn't want them to riot? I went to Marseille, France, a year and a half ago with Ephraim Monsanto. Almost half that town is Algerian. There's no integration. There's Algerian and there's French, and they don't interconnect. And you go one block in the wrong direction, there's not a French speaker in sight. Wow. And they just had, and it will become, and you know, I saw this one Algerian guy. I saw him at a cafe, and he looked very modern. He looked, you know, very Western in his wear. And I asked him what he thought about France as an Algerian. And here, let me play that video for you. He basically said France colonized Algeria for 130 years,
Remember
whatever.
that. Yeah.
We're here to colonize France for 100 years. Here's the exact quote, what he said. Take a look.
Tout ce qui se passe ici, c'est par rapport à l'État. Tout ça, c'est la faute des policiers, c'est la faute de l'État. Parce qu'il y a ici en France, il y a trop de racisme. Le racisme, il est au premier degré ici en France. C'est tout ce que j'ai à dire. C'est tout.
Pourquoi millions de musulmans immigrés à France si France est raciste?
Eh ben, ils nous ont colonisé 132 ans. Et là, c'est notre tour de venir ici pour comment t'expliquer là, je n'ai pas trouvé les mots. Ils nous ont colonisé 132 ans et maintenant on va les coloniser à vie jusqu'à la mort, jusqu'à la fin des temps. C'est ça.
Est-ce qu'il y a une solution? Comment allons-nous à paix, à victoire, à une solution à justice? How? Comment?
Justice. Ici en France, il n'y aura pas de justice, il n'y a pas de justice, il ne va pas y avoir de justice. Tant qu'ils sont racistes, il n'y aura pas de justice. Tant qu'il y a le racisme, il n'y aura pas de justice. Il faut avoir l'égalité entre les gens. Il faut avoir l'égalité. Il faut respecter les religions. Il faut respecter surtout les musulmans. Parce que les musulmans ne sont pas respectés ici. Ils nous voient comme des terroristes. On n'est pas des terroristes.
Voulez-vous condamner les jeunes musulmans qui révoltent à violence?
Je condamne personne. Chacun est responsable de ses actes. C'est tout. Je condamne personne. Chacun est responsable de ses actes.
Avez-vous un message pour président Macron?
J'ai pas de message pour Macron. J'ai un seul message. C'est que l'islam, c'est une religion de paix. Point barre. C'est bon.
Merci beaucoup pour votre réponse. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. What's your name, your first name?
Mohammed, comme le prophète alayhi salatu salam.
Et votre famille a immigré à France?
Ma famille vit en Algérie.
Merci.
Vit en Algérie. Et vive l'Algérie.
Dans votre cœur, êtes-vous Algérie ou Français à première?
Vive l'Algérie jusqu'à la mort. Tahia Jazair. Tahia Jazair, Tahia Jazair.
So that's the brazenness in France. And we are on that path here. And what's happening at Bathurst and Shepherd is of larger interest than just people who live in Bathurst and Shepherd or Toronto or Ontario. It is a template for what will happen. The rule of law will not be given to Jews or journalists. The law will be bent for political reasons or reasons of intrigue that we don't know about. Violence will be normalized. The low trust society will destroy what was great about Canada, and we will have no-go zones. We probably already have no-go zones in Canada. Anyhow, back to your arrest.
But you know what, Ezra,
yeah.
if I may, because you said a lot there, and it's incredible content. Two things. One is, I think you're off on the timeline that we're maybe 5 years away, which is to say, if a national Israeli soccer team flew from Tel Aviv to Toronto and they had a friendly with Team Canada at BMO Field here in Toronto, are you telling me that the pro-Hamas hooligans are not going down to BMO and looking for the members of the team, their supporters? I completely see that. I don't think that's 5 years away. Secondly, with mass immigration and the type of immigrants we're getting, I think what we've seen in the past year in the streets of our once great Dominion is how official multiculturalism has been a failure. And I even see people on the left saying that. It used to be you can come anywhere in the world to Canada. You can pursue the Canadian dream. You can take advantage of our social programs. You can be a Canadian citizen. All we ask in return, be good, obey the law. Don't bring age-old hatred here. But what do we see now? And it's not just with the Hamas situation in Brampton, sneaky Patrick Brown city. You're having showdowns of Sikhs versus Hindus on a continual basis now. I think the unspoken quid pro quo of come here and pursue our dream, but behave and don't import age-old feuds, I think it's been a failure, and the proof is in the pudding in the streets every weekend, Ezra.
Yeah. Charles de Gaulle, the French leader, French chauvinist, I would say, the personification of so many French things. He was asked, can a foreigner ever become a Frenchman? And he said yes, in small numbers over time, because you have to be completely soaked in Frenchness. You have to be marinated in it. You have to live it and love it. There was a candidate for president. There was Macron, of course, who was successful. There was Le Pen, who was in second place. But there was actually a Jewish Moroccan or Algerian, an Arab Jew, a Sephardi Jew named Eric Zemmour, who is an intellectual, TV pundit, and he spoke with such passion for France. He was a competitor of Le Pen. He's on the right. He's an Arab Jew. And I think of him, there's a guy, de Gaulle would look him up and down and say, all right, you're an Arab and a Jew, but by God, you love France and you want to save France. And that's the kind of
brilliant
French immigrant. I mean, I think of Irving Berlin, the great singer, songwriter, playwright. He wrote the song White Christmas.
Yeah.
He wrote the song God Bless America. He was trying to out-American the Americans. He was born in Russia. Yeah. His name at birth was Israel Bayline, but he changed it to Irving Berlin. He wrote, I hate to get up, I hate to get up, I hate to get up in the morning. Like like that, he did that whole, he was the USO. De Gaulle and Canada used to believe in, yes, immigration, but you're going to integrate.
Yeah.
You're going to assimilate. I think of when I was a kid, I went to school in the country west of Calgary. There was 400 kids in the school. There were 2 Jews, me and my sister, 2 black kids, and 2 Chinese kids, and 2 Sikh kids. And so you had to, as a Jew, as a black, as a Sikh, as a Chinese, you had to fit in. You had to become, you couldn't say, I'm not going to learn the language. No, I mean, my family came over in 1903, so I knew the language. I don't know any other language, actually. But if you are being absorbed into the system, there's no 2 ways about it. Like Irving Berlin, you better learn English quick or you're not going to survive. Yeah. You better make friends with the indigenous people or the local people or the people who predate you pretty quick, or you're not going to have any friends. But when you bring in, Trudeau's been bringing in 2 million people a year. You bring in a country of 40 million people, you bring in 2 million people a year, you can't assimilate, integrate. You can't. You'll live in little replicas of wherever you, little ghettos replicating where you were back home. And that is not Canada. Trudeau thinks that may be part of Canada. I think Trudeau is motivated by votes as much as anything. I think we are in a very dangerous time. This was a tangent, though. Let's get back to the arrest.
Sure.
So you were arrested. Yeah, and you were handcuffed. And I don't know why you're handcuffed. There's no requirement to be handcuffed when you're arrested. There's no requirement of that.
You know, that's an interesting point. I always assume they're following protocol because they always handcuff me. It's always behind my back, even though I tell them, and sometimes the cop is good-natured enough that he'll comply. I always say, can you put the handcuffs in the front, because I've got 2 artificial hip replacements, and with the confine of the cruiser, it's very hard to squeeze in there. And I don't want, Ezra, medical emergency. Like, there are restrictions when you have
Did you say that to the cops this time?
Oh, 100%.
And what did they do?
And then they went, to their credit, and they started trying to open the handcuffs.
But did you tell them before they cuffed you in the first place?
Oh, no, because all hell's breaking loose. Oh, yeah. They've thrown me over the hood of the police.
They throw you over the hood?
Oh, I think they get this from U.S. crime drama, on TV.
So they literally, that's not even... I can understand why someone might say, well, handcuff them to be sure.
Yeah.
But to throw someone over the hood.
Always. And Ezra, I think it's part of, people who are fans of Game of Thrones know what I'm talking about. It's the Cersei walk of shame. Yeah. It's that process of humiliation, public humiliation. And by the way, the Hamas people, they're cheering, they're laughing, they're smiling. They love this. Not that I let it get under my skin, but they had no choice but to bring me to the station because they literally, no matter which key they use, could not open the
So they say.
You know what, Ezra, on this point, I'm going to believe them. I think, just for their self-interest of not being in the rain, pouring on all of us as they're fiddling with it, I think they were sincere in trying to get it off. When we get to the station, they were putting lubricants in. They were using other keys. Nothing was working. They called the Toronto Fire Service. 6 firemen came. That kind of mortified me because I wouldn't like to, think that I'm the result of, there being a lack of bodies to put out an actual fire, right? And eventually they solved this problem because you can't use a bolt cutter on these things. And if you're using, if you're getting like a crowbar and using leverage, well, you're going to break the guy's wrist. So they got this diamond drill. It's really meant for if they have a medical emergency and they can't get somebody's wedding ring off. It's to cut through a gold ring. And eventually they got them both off by that. There's sparks flying everywhere. They were great. They were putting plastic shields to prevent my skin from getting singed. And, but you know what? It was almost like the Keystone Cops meet the Three Stooges. How does that even happen? I mean, I asked the cops, does this happen often? And every cop I said, we've never seen it before.
Yeah, sure they haven't. You know what? There was no reason to handcuff you in the first place. And when you are being arrested, typically they put a hand on you. That's sort of signifies you are now under our custody.
Right.
Do not resist. There's no need to handcuff. There's no need to throw over the hood of a car. And you are literally in their care as if you are a tiny baby. Mm-hmm. They have power over you to do anything. They can compel you. And if you don't comply, you're resisting arrest, and then they'll kick the living daylights out of you. Sounds like they did that anyways. But along with the absolute power over your physical state comes a duty of care to protect you.
I agree.
Which is why, for example, prison rape and prison violence is illegal, and it's to the discredit of the state. Because that's why when the state puts male to female transgender criminals in with female convicts, it's so outrageous because those women can't protect themselves in prison and the state refuses to. So when you're handcuffed, even if it was an accident and a mistake, and I'm skeptical of that, what they did to you with their stupid buffoonery and these handcuffs and the keys and the clown show, that's on them.
Oh, I agree. There was no reason for this. I'm not a flight risk. I'm not going to fight against the cops, certainly not against anyone who have tasers and guns. And I just want to get this over with. They could have just put me in uncuffed in the cruiser. And you've said this before, Ezra, we don't run away from legal challenges. We run to it. We confront it. And so that would have been my way I would engage with that. And they know that, I know that, you know that, everyone knows that. But I think it was all for the street theater to appease their Hamas audience.
Well, I'm not impressed. I've never been impressed with Myron Demke, the police chief of Toronto, who has presided over the worst crime wave in Toronto history. By every measure, crime is up. I mean, it's the car theft capital of North America now. Mm-hmm. Congratulations. And remember those morons saying, oh, stupid citizens, here's our advice if you don't like your car being stolen. Have your keys near the door so when the home invasion robbers come, they see the keys and don't hurt you. I mean, here's a clip of this. This is Toronto police giving their advice on how to stay safe when your car is being robbed. Remember this?
There's also updated advice for all vehicle owners, a message echoed by Toronto police speaking at an Etobicoke safety meeting last month. Constable Marco Ricciardi had a new message for vehicle owners who keep their fobs in Faraday pouches.
To prevent the possibility of being attacked in your home, leave your fobs at your front door, because they're breaking into your home to steal your car. They don't want anything else. A lot of them that they're arresting have guns on them, and they're not toy guns, they're real guns. They're loaded.
That's why Galinsky says they will be installing the door stops and taking YPR's advice seriously. But she'd like more action from police as well.
Yeah, so this is the crime wave police chief, and it disgusts me that the Jewish community has dinners in honor of this chief.
Well, why is that?
Because they're afraid and they're cowards and they're thinking maybe if we suck up to him, he'll listen to us. No, see, this police chief, just like the politicians, responds to the what's the path of least resistance. If he allows an anti-Semitic crime wave for a year, and the Jews give him an honorary dinner, whereas if he were to crack down on these pro-Hamas thugs, he's worried he might have an Amsterdam on his hands. He's going to arrest the Jews and critical journalists every time. And those
unbelievable.
damn fool official Jews honoring the police chief who's presiding over this slow motion Kristallnacht is a disgrace.
And Ezra, I want to say something too, because a lot of apologists will say, well, if there's hundreds, if there's thousands of these Hamas people, it's more important to keep the peace, which really means don't enforce the law. But at that intersection of Shepherd Avenue West and Bathurst Street, on the 4 weeks the pro-Hamas people have come there, clearly trying to start trouble up. There's thousands of intersections they can go to chant their genocide, but they go there to bait the Jewish people and the Israel fans, and they don't take it. The thing is that there are more people. At one of the protests, I estimated it was a 40-to-1 ratio in terms of the pro-Israel versus the pro-Hamas thing. So it's not an overwhelming mob. It was almost 1-to-1 police officer with a pro-Hamas demonstrator. So it was easily containable. You could have kettled them. You could have made arrests. There was not a safety issue. As you said, in terms of Amsterdam's, it is quite literally sticks and stones. The cops here have guns and tasers. So I'm not buying that excuse. In fact, what we saw a couple of weeks ago is the cops going into the pro-Israel section on behalf of the Hamas demonstrators, Ezra, because allegedly one of the demonstrators did the slash mark. And what do you know? 8 officers it took to arrest this guy, again, handcuffed behind the back in a cruiser down to 32 Division, while they're chanting genocide and displaying swastikas.
Yeah. I'm disgusted with the Toronto police. Yeah. I know the decisions are likely being made at a higher level than the beat cops, but after a point, it's just like during COVID times. There were brutal cops who that was their time to shine. Mask enforcement, 6 foot of separation BS. Well, David, we're going to continue to defend you. If folks want to help, go to standwithdavid.com. We have beaten every single charge against you so far for obvious reasons. It's fake. They're fake charges just designed to sweep you off the street. Thousands of dollars later, the Crown prosecutor says, I can't proceed with this. There's no law or facts behind it. In the meantime, they've inflicted this on you. They see you every time and they want to arrest you every time. They see the pro-Hamas thugs every time and they do favors for them every time. And the fact that you saw this pro-Hamas leader go to the police station by chance a couple hours after tells me that my theory that they're working together, the police and the pro-Hamas thugs are working together just like they had, because it's an informant situation. And the police have made the decision that they will use the Jewish community as a sacrifice zone. They will allow Nazi-style, Kristallnacht-style rallies in this city in the hopes that these ringleaders will hand over deadly terrorist bombers before they pull the trigger, instead of just deporting every goddamn one of them, which is the right answer.
100%, Ezra, and our audience can go to deporthamas.com for that petition. And I just want to say, I'm very fortunate to have someone of your caliber as my boss. I'm very fortunate to have the Rebel News viewers who contribute to these causes, such as Stand With David, because here's one other sidebar element before we wrap, Ezra. Unless you and our audience stand with me, when I look out to who the allies should be for a freedom of speech, freedom of the press issue, I'm talking about the Canadian Association of Journalists, the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, PEN Canada, the mainstream media, with the exceptions of Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun, and I wouldn't call AM 960 in Mississauga mainstream, but Mark Petroni and Richard Serrett. That's it. Warmington, Petroni, Serrett. Those are the only 3 journalists on record that have said something that this is outrageous. So we need, just as we need our viewers to make us function, because we don't take Trudeau's media welfare money, we need their support on this behalf, because nobody in the establishment, in the mainstream, is coming to our defense when you think, even if they hate us, Ezra, they should.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Canadian Journalists for Free Expression.
Yep.
You've been arrested 5 times this year.
Correct.
I can't think of any other journalist who's been arrested once. And you know, if it was a CBC journalist or a Toronto Star journalist, it would be top news in the country, because they're all on the dole. They're all on the regime's payroll, and so they know not to bite the hand that feeds them. Well, David, we'll continue to stand with you, and we'll have to come up with a plan, because I remember the last time the police were abusing our reporters. It was in Montreal during COVID times, and they were harassing Yankee and calling him Jew media. It was so weird and so gross. We sent a few more reporters, and they were harassed. And then later we sent 17 reporters, and we had a bit of a showdown. Maybe we need a mass deployment of rebel reporters at the intersection of Bathurst and Shepherd, because I am not willing to concede 1 inch of the public sidewalk to Hamas thugs or their allies in the Toronto police force. I got to put my thinking cap on that a bit, but my instinct is not to bend the knee. David, keep up the fight.
Thank you, Ezra.
We'll keep fighting with you. If you want to help, go to standwithdavid.com. Every time we call a lawyer, we have to pay the lawyer. I don't believe in pro bono lawyers. I believe in paying lawyers because I want an excellent lawyer. I want a subject matter specialist. And I know the thing about pro bono lawyers. Pro bono is lawyers who volunteer to work for free. And they do for a while, but then they have to pay the bills, or something else is more important. And I've always said there's nothing more expensive than a cheap lawyer. So we've made the decision to hire an outstanding criminal lawyer for David. Really, look her up if you like. Her name is Leora Shemish. She's one of the top criminal lawyers in Toronto, because we must not lose ever, not once. We have to win, and we have to take it to the bad guys. And that costs money, because we must defend David. I believe I have to defend David as if it were myself in jeopardy. And if I have that point of view, then the team knows that they can act with confidence as long as they do the right thing, which they always do. That's our show for today. Until tomorrow, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.
Folks, I'm so sorry to ask for your generosity again, but I have a target on my back, it would seem, and if you could go to standwithdavid.com, that's standwithdavid.com, we are incurring, legal fees, as you can imagine, because every time I practice journalism, when it comes to the pro-Hamas set, who apparently have the ear of the police, I get arrested. And I need your support so I can continue practicing journalism. As I said earlier, my grandfather spent more than 5 years of his life fighting the Nazis. I will be damned if I bend the knee to the Islamo-Nazis.